The scent of winter lilies and sacred moon oil filled the great hall, but all I could register was the blood pounding in my ears, a frantic drum against the sudden, suffocating silence. My hand, trembling in Prince Liam's grasp, felt slick with a sweat that had nothing to do with the ceremonial heat. Before me, the High Elder raised the silver bonding cord, his voice a low, rumbling chant that was meant to be a comfort, but now felt like a death knell. He was 2 words away from binding my soul to the kind, gentle prince I had been promised to, the man who was my pack's salvation, my only path away from hunger and obscurity. 2 words from sealing a fate I had accepted with quiet resignation. And then a shadow fell over us, so vast and cold it stole the very breath from the air. A voice, not of thunder, but of the chilling stillness that precedes it, cut through the hollowed space, each word a shard of ice. "Stop!" The High Elder froze, his ancient eyes wide with disbelief. Prince Liam stiffened, his knuckles white where he gripped my hand. And I, Ilara, daughter of a forgotten bloodline, a girl whose only value was in this arranged union, dared to lift my gaze. King Kale, the Alpha of Alphas, stood on the dais above us, his silver eyes fixed not on his brother, not on the elder, but on me. He descended the steps with a predator's grace, his presence a physical force that pressed the entire assembly into a terrified hush. He did not look at his brother as he reached us. He looked only at me, his gaze stripping away every defense I had ever built. He took my free hand, his touch a brand of lightning and ice, and pulled me away from the prince. He held my chin, forcing me to meet the merciless depths of his eyes. And in the ringing silence of 1,000 shattered expectations, the Alpha King spoke the words that would ruin everything. "This one," he declared, his voice leaving no room for argument, no hope for appeal, "is mine. Wait before the next revelation unfolds." If this mystery has already captivated you, let us know where you're following this story from. To ensure you don't miss unexpected claims, broken bonds, or awakenings under the moon, subscribe and stay close. Now, back to the scene. A collective gasp rippled through the hall, a wave of shock so potent I felt it crash against my skin. Liam's hand fell away, not because he let go, but because Kael's claim was an absolute, a force of nature that had severed the connection before it was ever forged. I saw Liam's face, a mask of stunned betrayal, his mouth slightly agape as he stared at his older brother. The kindness in his eyes, the gentle warmth that had been my only solace for weeks, was extinguished, replaced by a storm of confusion and fury. "Brother, what is the meaning of this?" Liam's voice was tight, strained. "This is my bonding ceremony. Ilara is my intended." Kael didn't even grant him a glance. His focus was a physical weight on me, his thumb stroking my jaw with a possessiveness that made my wolf, a timid creature I barely ever felt, curled into a terrified ball in the pit of my stomach. "She was your intended," Kael corrected, his tone flat, devoid of any emotion save for an unshakable certainty. "Plans have changed." He tugged me toward the dais, my simple ceremonial gown of white linen catching on the rough-hewn stone steps. I stumbled, my knees weak. He caught me easily, his arm a band of iron around my waist, pulling me flush against his side. The scent of pine and frozen earth overwhelmed me, a wild, untamed scent that spoke of power and solitude. He was nothing like Liam, who smelled of old books and warm spice. He was the wilderness itself, and I was a cornered doe. The High Elder, recovering his senses, took a hesitant step forward. "Your Majesty," he began, his voice trembling slightly. "The pact was made. The union between Prince Liam and the Lady Ilara of the Stone Creek Pack is a sacred treaty meant to strengthen the Southern Territories." "I am aware of the treaty, Elder," Kael said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper that carried to every corner of the hall. "And I will honor it. The Southern Territories will have their royal alliance." He looked down at me then, his silver eyes pinning me in place. With their king. He didn't wait for another protest. With me still locked against his side, he turned and ascended the dais, pulling me with him. He led me past the ancient throne of the Alpha Kings, a seat carved from the heart of a petrified weirwood, and through a heavy oak door that slammed shut behind us, the sound echoing the final brutal closing of a chapter of my life. The sudden quiet of the antechamber was more deafening than the chaos we had left behind. Guards in black and silver armor stood at attention, their faces impassive, though I saw the flicker of shock in their eyes. They had just witnessed the breaking of a tradition as old as the kingdom itself. Kael did not release me. His grip was unrelenting as he dragged me through a labyrinth of cold stone corridors, my bare feet struggling to find purchase on the polished floors. We moved so quickly, the tapestries on the walls blurred into streaks of color, depictions of great battles and legendary beasts lost in my panicked haze. I was a ghost being pulled through a history I had no part in. My mind raced, trying to make sense of the impossible. Why? Why would the Alpha King, a man who had ruled for a decade with cold, ruthless efficiency, a man who had reportedly never taken a lover, let alone a mate, want me? I was no one. My pack, Stone Creek, was on the verge of collapse after a series of harsh winters and a blight that had decimated our herds. My father, the Pack Alpha, had arranged my union with Prince Liam as a last resort. We would get supplies, protection, and a royal connection. In return, the royal family would get a foothold in the South and a pliable, low-ranking bride who would cause no political waves. I was a bargain, a commodity. I had understood my role and accepted it. To be Liam's bride was a kindness I hadn't expected. He was scholarly and quiet, and during our few, chaperoned meetings, he had spoken to me with a respect I had never known. He'd asked about my favorite stories, about the flowers that grew in the South. He had seen a person, not a treaty. I had allowed myself a small, fragile sliver of hope that my life might not be one of pure duty, that perhaps a gentle affection could grow. King Kael had just shattered that hope with a single word. He was not known for kindness. He was known for his brutality on the battlefield and his iron-fisted rule. He was called the Winter King, not for his silver eyes, but for the ice that was said to reside in his heart. Stories were whispered about how he had single-handedly torn the throat out of the feral Alpha who had challenged his father for the throne. He was a killer, a ruler, a being of immense and terrifying power, and he had just claimed me. Finally, we stopped before a set of towering doors inlaid with mother-of-pearl. He pushed them open, revealing a suite of rooms so opulent they made the rest of the castle seem rustic. Silks and velvets and shades of deep blue and silver draped the walls, and a fire roared in a marble fireplace large enough for a man to stand in. A massive bed, piled high with furs, dominated the center of the main room. It was a cage, beautiful and vast, but a cage nonetheless. He released me so abruptly I staggered back, wrapping my arms around myself. He turned to face me, his 6.5-foot frame seeming to shrink the enormous room. He was built not with the lean grace of his brother, but with the hard, dense muscle of a warrior. Scars, faint and white, mapped his hands and peeked from the collar of his black tunic. One thin line bisected his eyebrow, giving him a permanently severe expression. "These are your chambers," he said, his voice flat. "You will not leave them without my permission." My throat was dry, my tongue thick. But a spark of defiance, a thing I thought had been extinguished long ago by hardship and duty, flickered to life. "Why?" I whispered, my voice hoarse. His eyes narrowed. "I am your king. I do not owe you an explanation." "You owe your brother one," I shot back, shocked at my own audacity. "You shamed him. You shamed my family, my pack, in front of the entire court." For a moment, a flicker of something unreadable passed through his eyes. It wasn't anger. It was deeper, more complex. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared, replaced by the familiar mask of cold indifference. "Liam's shame is his own to bear. Your pack will receive twice the provisions promised in the original treaty. Their loyalty is to the crown, not to my brother. They will be satisfied." He spoke of my home, my people, as if they were pieces on a game board, easily placated with grain and gold. He didn't understand. This was about honor, about promises, about the hope he had just casually crushed. "I will not do this," I said, my voice gaining a sliver of strength. "I was promised to Liam. I will not be your thing, your prize." He took a slow step toward me, and I had to fight the instinct to retreat. He stopped just before me, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. He leaned down, his face level with mine. "You seem to be under a misapprehension, Lady Elara," he murmured, his voice a low, dangerous growl that vibrated through my bones. "You think you have a choice." He raised a hand, and for a terrifying second, I thought he would strike me. Instead, his fingers brushed a stray strand of hair from my cheek, his touch surprisingly gentle, yet it sent a jolt of unwanted electricity through my entire body. It was the mate bond, fractured and incomplete without the ceremony, but undeniably there, a humming, electric wire connecting us. I felt a faint echo of his own emotions, a deep, ancient weariness hidden beneath layers of iron control. It was disorienting, terrifying. "Whether you are my prize, my prisoner, or my queen," he continued, his silver eyes boring into mine, "is a matter of perspective. But what is not up for debate is the fact that you are mine. You will accept it, you will adapt, or you will break." He straightened up, turning his back on me as he walked toward the door. "A servant will be sent to attend to you. Do not try to leave." The door closed with a soft click, but it felt as loud as the slam in the antechamber. I was alone. I ran to the door, my hands scrabbling at the cold, smooth wood. It was unlocked. Of course it was. He didn't need a lock to keep me here. His word was law, his power an invisible wall stronger than any stone. I sank to the floor, my back against the door, and for the first time since my parents died in the great winter, I let myself weep. I cried for the gentle prince and the quiet life I might have had. I cried for my pack, who would celebrate their good fortune while their alpha's daughter was sold to a tyrant. And I cried for myself, a pawn in a game I didn't understand, claimed by a king whose heart was made of ice. The dilemma was as vast as it was simple. I could be the docile prisoner he expected, a queen in a gilded cage, and ensure my people's survival. Or I could fight him, search for a way out of this nightmare, and risk not only my own life, but the lives of everyone I had ever cared about. The tears stopped, replaced by a cold resolve. He had called me Lady Elara of Stone Creek. He didn't know me. Stone Creek wolves were not known for their strength or their ferocity. They were known for their endurance. We knew how to survive harsh winters, how to wait for the thaw. And I would wait. I would watch. And I would find a way to survive the Winter King. The days that followed blurred into a monotonous cycle of luxurious imprisonment. A silent, terrified servant girl named Lyra brought me meals on silver trays, laid out exquisite gowns of silk and velvet I refused to wear, and drew steaming baths scented with oils I didn't want. She would not meet my eye, and my attempts at conversation were met with mumbled, one-word answers and a hasty retreat. I was a pariah, the king's strange obsession, and my presence was a contagion of fear. I remained in the simple linen dress from the ceremony, a silent act of defiance he would surely notice on the rare occasions he appeared. Kale was a ghost in my new life. I would go days without seeing him, only to have him materialize in my chambers at odd hours without warning. He would stand by the fire and watch me, his silver eyes unblinking, his presence sucking all the warmth from the room. He never spoke of the ceremony again. He would ask curt questions about my comfort, if I required anything, his tone that of a warden checking on a prized asset. Each time I would meet his gaze and answer, "I require my freedom." A muscle would tick in his jaw, the only sign that my words affected him at all, and then he would be gone, leaving me with the lingering scent of pine and the unsettling hum of the bond that connected us against my will. This bond was a constant, low-grade fever in my blood. It was a torment. At night, I would be jerked from a restless sleep by a phantom ache in my shoulder, only to learn the next day that the king had been sparring. I would feel a sudden crushing wave of loneliness while staring out the window, a sorrow so profound it couldn't be my own. It was his. An intrusive, unwelcome glimpse into the man behind the crown. It made hating him a task that should have been simple, complicated, and messy. I hated him for what he had done, but the bond forced me to feel the crushing weight of the crown he wore, the solitude that clung to him like a shroud. One evening, nearly a fortnight into my captivity, I was pacing the confines of my chamber like a caged animal when a soft knock came at the door. It wasn't Lyra. Her knock was timid, apologetic. This was firmer. Hope, a stupid, fluttering thing, rose in my chest. Liam. I rushed to the door and pulled it open. Prince Liam stood there, his face pale and drawn, his familiar brown eyes filled with a mixture of anger and concern. He looked thinner than I remembered, the scholarly softness of his face sharpened by stress. Two of the king's guards stood behind him, their expressions unreadable. "Ilara," he breathed, his eyes scanning me as if searching for injuries. "Are you well? He hasn't hurt you?" "I am unharmed," I said, my voice low. "Just a prisoner." His jaw tightened. "I tried to see you sooner. He forbade it. I had to appeal to the Council of Elders just to be granted this visit." He stepped inside, and the guards moved to block the doorway, their message clear. This was a temporary reprieve, not an escape. "Why did he do it, Liam?" I asked, the question that had tormented me for weeks. Why would he interfere? Liam ran a hand through his disheveled hair. "I don't know. No one does. He has never shown the slightest interest in the bond, in finding a mate. He calls it a weakness. He's always said the kingdom needs a warrior, not a husband." He looked around the opulent room, his gaze lingering on the untouched gowns draped over a chaise lounge. "And now this. He takes you, a girl promised to his brother, from a minor pack. It makes no political sense. The court is in an uproar. They whisper that he's gone mad." "He said he would honor the treaty," I told him. "He promised my pack double the provisions." "He did," Liam confirmed, a bitter twist to his lips. "Carts of grain and medicine arrived at Stone Creek a week ago. Your father sent a message pledging his unwavering fealty to his generous new son." The word felt like acid on his tongue. I flinched. My own father had accepted this, had traded me without a second thought. The last thread of hope that my family might fight for me, for the original pact, snapped. "So I am truly alone in this," I murmured, sinking onto the edge of the bed. Liam crossed the room in 2 strides and knelt before me, taking my hands in his. His touch was warm and familiar, a stark contrast to the king's electric coldness. "No," he said fiercely, "you are not alone. I will not stand for this. He has no right. A claiming without the bonding ceremony is fragile. It is a declaration of intent, not a sacred law. It can be challenged." "Challenged?" My head snapped up. "How?" "By me," he said, his eyes burning with a conviction I had never seen in him. "I can issue a formal challenge, a trial of combat, for you." My heart leaped, then immediately plummeted. A challenge? A fight to the death? The kind, gentle Liam against his brother, the Winter King? A battle-hardened killer? "No," I said, pulling my hands from his. "Absolutely not. He would kill you, Liam. You know he would." "It is my right," he insisted, standing up. "It is the old way. He broke a sacred promise. I will not let him rule by tyranny. I will not let him have you." "And what about me?" I cried, rising to face him. "Have you thought of that? If you die, I am still his, but now with your blood on his hands? And if by some miracle you were to win, do you think the kingdom would simply accept you after you killed their king? We would be hunted, Liam, both of us." His face fell, the righteous fire in his eyes dimming as the cold reality of his words set in. He had thought of his honor, his broken promise, but not of the impossible aftermath. He was a good man, but he was not a strategist. Chaol was. Chaol thought of every move, every consequence. That's why he was king. "Then what are we to do?" Liam asked, his voice filled with despair. "Simply let him win?" "We watch," I said, a plan, fragile and uncertain, beginning to form in my mind. "We wait. He is hiding something. There is a reason for this, a reason he won't tell anyone. If we can find out what it is, we can find a weakness. We can find leverage." Liam looked at me, a newfound respect in his eyes. He was used to seeing me as a quiet, dutiful girl. He was now seeing the wolf from Stone Creek, the survivor. "Leverage," he repeated, nodding slowly. "He is a man of secrets. The castle is full of them." "I can't do it from in here," I said, gesturing around my gilded cage. "I need to get out of these rooms. I need to be able to move, to listen." "I will see what I can do," Liam promised. "I will speak to the elders on the council who are sympathetic. I will argue that your complete isolation is unseemly for a future queen." Just as he spoke, the temperature in the room plummeted. The fire in the hearth seemed to shrink, its flames cowering. Both Liam and I turned to the doorway. King Chaol stood there, flanked by the guards, his silver eyes blazing with a cold fire that was more terrifying than any heat. He had been listening. "Your time is up, brother," Chaol said, his voice deceptively calm. Liam stood his ground. "She should not be kept locked away. It is not right." "What is right for my mate is my concern, not yours," Chaol snarled, stepping into the room. The two brothers faced each other, the tension between them a palpable thing. It was more than just a rivalry over a woman. It was years of unspoken resentment, of the heir and the spare, of the warrior and the scholar coming to a head. "Stay away from her, Liam," Chaol warned, his voice a low growl. "I won't tell you again." Liam held his gaze for a long moment before his shoulders slumped in defeat. He knew, as I did, that this was a battle he could not win. Not here, not now. He gave me one last, lingering look, a silent promise that this was not over, and then he brushed past his brother and out of the room. Chaol turned his glacial gaze back to me. "So, you conspire with my brother? You seek my weaknesses? He walked toward me, and this time I did not stand my ground. I backed away until my legs hit the bed and I fell onto the furs. He loomed over me, a mountain of fury and power. You want to get out of these rooms? You want to listen to the whispers in the castle halls? He leaned down, placing his hands on the mattress on either side of me, trapping me. His face was inches from mine, his scent of pine and winter filling my senses, the bond between us screaming with his rage, and beneath it, something else. Something that felt like fear. "Very well," he whispered, his breath a cool caress against my skin. "You want to be my queen. Then you shall learn what it means. Starting tomorrow, you will attend me in the throne room. You will sit by my side as I dispense justice. You will see the snakes and the sycophants who call themselves my court. You will see the burdens I bear, and you will learn that there are cages far worse than this one." He pushed himself away from me and stood, his expression once again an unreadable mask of ice. "And when you have seen the truth of my world," he said, his voice dropping, "you will beg me to bring you back to the safety of these chambers." He turned and left, the door closing softly behind him, leaving me trembling on the bed, my heart hammering against my ribs. I had wanted a way out, and he had given it to me, but I knew with a chilling certainty that I had not been freed. I had just been moved to a larger, more dangerous cage. True to his word, the next morning Lyra arrived, not with a breakfast tray, but with a gown of deep emerald velvet, its sleeves embroidered with silver thread. It was beautiful, regal, and felt like a costume for a part I didn't know how to play. There was no choice but to wear it. 2 guards escorted me from my chambers to the throne room, their silence a heavy weight. As we walked, the whispers started. Courtiers in fine silks paused their conversations to stare, their eyes filled with a mixture of curiosity, disdain, and fear. I was the Omega girl from the south who had somehow bewitched their mad king. They looked at me as if I were a disease, a bad omen. I lifted my chin, remembering my father's lessons. Never let them see your fear. Stone Creek wolves endure. The throne room was a vast, intimidating chamber with a vaulted ceiling and stained glass windows depicting the lineage of the Alpha Kings. At the far end, on a raised platform, sat the Weirwood throne, and on it sat Kale. He looked different here, in his element. He was not just a man, but an embodiment of power. Clad in black leather and a simple silver circlet, he commanded the room with an effortless authority. A smaller, less ornate chair had been placed to the right of his throne, my chair. As I walked the long aisle toward the dais, every eye was on me. The whispers grew louder, a hiss of speculation and judgment. I could feel their thoughts as if they were tiny needles against my skin. "She's so plain. Look at the way she walks. She is no queen." I kept my eyes fixed on Kale. His expression was impassive, but as I drew closer, I felt a flicker of something through the bond, a grim satisfaction. He was testing me, throwing me to the wolves of his court to see if I would break. I reached the dais and curtsied, my movements stiff. "Your Majesty," I said, my voice clear and steady, betraying none of the terror I felt. "As you commanded." He gave a slight nod, gesturing to the chair beside him. "Attend me." I sat, my back ramrod straight, and the day's proceedings began. It was a brutal education. I listened as Kale passed judgment on land disputes, trade disagreements, and criminal offenses. He was harsh, but, to my surprise, meticulously fair. He listened to each petition with an unnerving stillness, his silver eyes seeming to see straight through lies and pretense. He sentenced a merchant who had cheated a farmer to forfeit his profits and spend a month working the man's land. He settled a border dispute between two hot-headed minor lords by walking to a great map on the wall and drawing a new border himself, warning them both that if they shed a single drop of blood over it, he would claim both their lands for the crown. He was not a tyrant, he was a king. A hard king, a merciless king, but a just one. The court was indeed full of snakes. Lords and ladies approached with their fawning smiles and hidden daggers, trying to curry favor or poison him against a rival. I watched as Lady Seraphina, a stunningly beautiful she-wolf with hair like spun gold, tried to subtly undermine the master of coin, her words dripping with sweet venom. Kale cut her off with a single, cold look that sent her scurrying back into the crowd. He saw every plot, every angle, and I saw the toll it took on him. Through the bond, I felt the constant, grinding pressure of his vigilance, the exhaustion he kept hidden behind his iron mask, the profound, isolating loneliness of being the one person who could trust no one. It was a revelation that shook me. I had seen him as a simple monster, a captor, but the truth was infinitely more complex. He was a man shackled to a throne, a wolf who carried the weight of a kingdom on his shoulders, alone. During a lull in the proceedings, he leaned toward me, his voice a low murmur only I could hear. "Are you enjoying the theater, my lady?" There was a mocking edge to his tone, but I could feel the weariness behind it. I met his gaze, my own expression serious. I am learning that a crown is heavier than it looks. For the briefest of moments, the mask slipped. I saw a flicker of surprise, of something akin to respect, in his silver eyes before it was gone. "A lesson my brother has yet to grasp," he said, his voice flat, and turned his attention back to the next petitioner. This became our new routine. Every day I sat beside him. I learned the names and faces of the court, the intricate webs of alliances and rivalries. I learned about the kingdom's dwindling grain reserves, about the growing threat of feral packs on the northern border, about a strange, wasting sickness that was beginning to affect the wolves in the eastern villages. The kingdom was more fragile than I had ever imagined, balanced on a knife's edge. And Kyle was the one keeping it from falling into chaos. My hatred for him began to curdle into something far more confusing. I still resented him for his actions, for the life he had stolen from me. But I was beginning to understand him, and in understanding, the sharp edges of my animosity began to dull. He was not cruel for the sake of it. He was ruthless because he had to be. One night, I was awakened by a sharp, searing pain in my own chest. It wasn't a phantom pain from the bond. It was real, visceral. I gasped, clutching my nightgown, my heart racing. A dream, vivid and terrifying, had torn me from sleep. I was in a dark forest, the trees skeletal and black against a blood-red moon. I was running, my feet bare and bleeding, but I wasn't running from something. I was running as something. Power, wild and untamed, surged through my veins. It was a terrifying, exhilarating feeling. I felt my bones shifting, my senses heightening. And then the pain in my chest, a feeling of being torn apart from the inside out. I sat up in bed, breathing heavily, the dream already fading, but the memory of the power, the pain, still clinging to me. At that moment, the doors to my chamber burst open. Kyle stood there, not in his royal attire, but in a simple tunic and trousers, his hair disheveled. He looked wild, his eyes wide with a frantic alarm I had never seen in him. "Ilara," he breathed, crossing the room in 3 long strides. He knelt by my bed, his hands hovering over me, afraid to touch. "You felt it too?" I could only nod, my throat too tight to speak. "The dream," I managed to whisper. "The forest, the power." His face, which I had only ever seen as a mask of cold control, was now a canvas of raw, unguarded emotion. He looked terrified. "What is happening to me?" I asked, my voice shaking. He finally reached out, his hand gently cupping my cheek. His skin was cold, but his touch was steady, anchoring. The bond between us flared, not with tension or anger, but with a shared, desperate fear. "It's beginning," he murmured, more to himself than to me. His gaze was distant, looking at something I couldn't see. "Sooner than I thought." He closed his eyes, a deep sigh racking his powerful frame. In that moment, he was not the Winter King. He was just a man, haunted and afraid. A secret was unraveling, a truth far more complex than a simple mad whim of a king. And I was standing at the very heart of it. My fight for freedom had suddenly become a fight for answers, a desperate need to understand the power that was waking inside me, and the king who seemed to hold the key. He pulled away, the walls of his composure slowly rebuilding, but the cracks remained. I could see the turmoil in his eyes, the war being waged within him. "Get dressed," he said, his voice regaining its command, though a slight tremor betrayed him. "There is something you need to see." He didn't wait for my reply, turning and striding out of the room, leaving me with 100 questions and a heart that beat with a nervous, fearful rhythm. I dressed quickly, choosing a practical riding tunic and trousers that Lyra had laid out weeks ago. My hands shook as I braided my hair. The dream, the power, Cale's reaction, it all pointed to a truth that he had gone to extraordinary lengths to conceal. This was the reason. The reason he'd claimed me, shamed his brother, and thrown the entire kingdom into confusion. It was not about desire or madness. It was about this power I had felt, this terrifying force that was now stirring within me. The guards escorted me not to the throne room, but down a spiraling staircase into the depths of the castle, to a section I had never seen. The air grew cooler, scented with dust and old parchment. We stopped before an iron-bound door, which Kael pushed open, revealing a vast circular library. Shelves overflowing with books and scrolls stretched from the floor to the domed ceiling. In the center of the room, a single ancient tome lay open on a lectern. It was bound in what looked like faded dragonhide, its pages filled with elegant archaic script. Kael walked to the lectern, his hand resting on the open page. "This is the Annal of Kings," he said, his voice echoing in the hollowed silence. "It contains the history of our line, our laws, and our prophecies." He gestured for me to come closer. I approached hesitantly, my eyes drawn to the script. The passage on the open page was illuminated with a drawing of a silver-eyed wolf and a she-wolf with a faint star-like mark on her shoulder. "For centuries, a prophecy has been passed down," Kael explained, his gaze fixed on the book. "It speaks of a blight, a shadow that will fall upon the land, withering our crops, poisoning our wolves, and plunging the kingdom into an endless winter. It speaks of a power, dormant in a forgotten bloodline, that is the only key to salvation." He finally looked at me, and the full weight of his gaze was a physical blow. "The prophecy states that this power can only be awakened when the blood of the forgotten line is joined with the Alpha King, not a prince, not an heir, the king himself." The world tilted on its axis. My breath caught in my throat. "Me?" I whispered. "The forgotten bloodline? That's my family?" He nodded grimly. "Your ancestor, Lyanna of the Stone Creek, was a powerful seer, a moon caller. After she died, the gift faded from your line, becoming nothing more than a whisper in your blood. Until you. The blight, the wasting sickness in the east, I said, the pieces clicking into place with horrifying clarity. It started, hasn't it? Yes, he confirmed. The reports grow worse each week. The crops in the eastern farms are failing. The wolves born there are weak, their pelts thin. The shadow is spreading. I had hoped we had more time. I stared at him, my mind reeling. This whole time, I had thought I was a victim of his lust or his tyranny. But the truth was so much worse. I was not a person to him. I was a tool, a key, a means to an end. The ultimate rejection, colder and more cruel than any simple act of malice, settled in my heart. The glimmers of understanding I'd felt, the empathy for the burden he carried, it all curdled into a bitter poison. He had felt our mate bond, he must have, and he had ignored it, seeing me only as a prophecy to be fulfilled. "So you claimed me out of duty?" I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "You took me from Liam, humiliated me, imprisoned me, all to use me as a weapon?" His jaw tightened. "I did what I had to do for my kingdom." "Your kingdom," I spat, the word an accusation. "Did it ever occur to you to tell me, to ask for my help? Or did you just assume the little Omega girl from the south was too stupid to understand?" "Telling you would have put you in danger," he countered, his voice rising, a flash of raw frustration in his eyes. "There are those in my court who would see this prophecy fail, who would gladly see the kingdom fall if it meant they could pick at its bones. If they knew what you were, they would have killed you before you ever reached the capital. And what you have done is so much better," I cried, tears of rage and heartbreak blurring my vision. "I am not your sacrifice to make, Kale. My life is my own." I turned to flee, to run anywhere away from him, from this devastating truth. He caught my arm, his grip firm but not bruising. "Ilara, wait. Let go of me," I sobbed, trying to wrench my arm free. "I hate you. Do you hear me? I hate you." The pain in my voice seemed to strike him like a physical blow. His face, for the first time, crumpled with genuine anguish. The king's mask was gone, and in its place was a man in torment. "I know," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "And you have every right to." The raw honesty of his words stopped my struggling. I looked up at him, and through my tears, I saw the truth of his own personal hell. The bond, which he had likely viewed as an unfortunate complication, was forcing him to feel every ounce of my pain, my betrayal, my hatred. He was bound to the weapon he had intended to wield, and it was tearing him apart. At that moment, a frantic pounding echoed from the iron door of the library. A guard burst in, his face pale with panic, foregoing all protocol. "Your Majesty, forgive the intrusion, but it's the prince, Prince Liam. He's gone." Kale's head snapped toward the guard, his personal anguish instantly swallowed by the king's authority. "What do you mean, gone?" "He rode out an hour ago, my king, alone. He took the north road. One of the stable hands said he was muttering about the northern border, about the feral packs." My blood ran cold. The northern border, where the feral threat was growing. Liam, heartbroken and furious, trying to prove himself, to defy his brother in the only way he knew how, by being the hero Kale never allowed him to be. He was riding into a death trap. Kale cursed, a single violent word. He looked from the guard back to me, his eyes filled with a desperate, terrible conflict. His kingdom was fracturing from within and without. His brother was riding to his death, and the woman who was the key to saving them all now looked at him with nothing but contempt. The fractures were no longer just in our bond. They were in the foundations of his entire world. And as I stood there, trapped between my own shattered heart and the impending doom of a kingdom, I realized I had to make a choice. I could let my hatred consume me, let Liam ride to his fate and watch Kayel's world burn. Or I could embrace the terrible power that was waking inside me and become the weapon he needed me to be, even if it meant losing myself in the process. The Winter King had made his move out of duty. Now I had to decide if I was capable of doing the same. "I'm coming with you," I said, my voice leaving no room for argument. Kayel stared at me, surprise warring with suspicion in his eyes. "It's too dangerous." "Your brother is out there because of us," I retorted, my tone sharp. "He is in danger because you broke his heart, and I let him believe he was my only ally. I will not hide in here while he risks his life." I met his gaze, letting him see the cold resolve in mine. This was not about forgiveness. It was about responsibility. It was about Liam. A flicker of something, gratitude, perhaps, crossed his face before he gave a curt nod. "Stay close." The ride north was a frantic, punishing race against time. Kayel commanded a dozen of his best royal guard to ride with us, their silver and black armor a stark contrast to the darkening landscape. We rode without pause, the pounding of hooves a desperate prayer against the encroaching twilight. The bond between me and Kayel was a taut wire of shared anxiety. I could feel his frantic worry for his brother, a deep, familial love hidden beneath their years of rivalry. And he, in turn, could feel my own gnawing fear for the kind prince who had tried to save me. There was no room for our personal conflict, only the singular, driving purpose of reaching Liam before it was too late. We found the first signs of trouble as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in bloody shades of orange and purple. A dead horse, Liam's familiar chestnut mare, lay on the road, her throat torn out. A few yards away, a trail of blood and scuffed earth led into the dense, dark woods of the Northern Territories. Kayel dismounted before his horse had even skidded to a halt, his face a grim mask of stone. He knelt by the tracks, his eyes scanning the scene with a warrior's practiced gaze. "Ferals," he growled. "At least 10 of them. They dragged him in there." He looked up at the impenetrable darkness of the forest. "He's still alive. They'll want to make a show of it. A prince's death is a message." He turned to his men. "Secure the perimeter. Light torches. If anything other than Liam or my men comes out of that forest, kill it." He then looked at me, his silver eyes intense. "You will stay here." "No," I said, sliding off my own horse. "I'm going in with you." "Don't be a fool, Alara. You're not a warrior." "But I am what they're not," I countered, the truth of it settling in my bones with a strange certainty. The dream, the power, it was a part of me now. "Something is changing in me, Kayel. I can feel the woods. I can feel them." A low growl rumbled in his chest, a battle between his protective instinct and the desperate need for any advantage. The prophecy was his only hope, and I was its vessel. He finally gave a sharp, reluctant nod. By my side, not a step away. We entered the forest, and it was like stepping into another world. The air was cold and smelled of decay. Twisted, skeletal trees clawed at a sky where no stars shone. The only light came from the single torch Kayel carried, its flame casting long, dancing shadows that played tricks on the eyes. As we moved deeper, a strange hum started in my mind. It was a chaotic, savage energy, a chorus of hunger and bloodlust. It was the Ferals. I could feel their presence, their corrupted minds. I closed my eyes, concentrating. "They're close," I whispered, pointing to the east. "There's a clearing. They have him there." Kale didn't question me. He trusted the prophecy, if not the woman. He signaled to the 5 guards who had followed us in, and we moved with silent speed in the direction I had indicated. The sounds reached us first, the guttural taunts of the ferals, and then a cry of pain that was unmistakably Liam's. We burst into the clearing to a horrific scene. Liam was tied to a crude wooden stake in the center of the clearing, his tunic torn and bloody, his face bruised and swollen. A circle of at least 15 feral wolves surrounded him. They were larger than normal wolves, their fur matted, their eyes glowing with a sickly yellow light. Their leader, a monstrous beast with a scarred muzzle and black, patchy fur, stalked around the prince, snapping its jaws near his face. "The little prince came to play," the scarred feral snarled, his voice a gravelly mockery of speech. "Sent by your tyrant brother to clean up the border. He can't even protect his own blood." Kale didn't hesitate. With a roar of pure fury, he shifted. It was a terrifying, violent transformation. His bones cracked and reformed, his body exploding into the form of a massive wolf, larger than any I had ever seen. His fur was the color of shadows and snow, and his eyes burned with silver fire. He was no longer a king or a man. He was vengeance. He launched himself into the pack, a whirlwind of claws and teeth. His guards followed suit, their own shifts adding to the chaos of the battle. The clearing became a maelstrom of snarling, ripping fury. But they were outnumbered. For every feral they took down, 2 more took its place. I saw one of the guards fall, his throat torn out before he could even yelp. I had to do something. The power I had felt in my dream, the chaotic energy that had terrified me, now felt like my only hope. I looked at Liam, his eyes wide with terror. Then at Kyle, fighting with a desperation that was both magnificent and doomed. I closed my eyes and reached for that power, not with fear, but with intent. I called to it. I let it flood me. It felt like my veins were on fire. The world dissolved behind my eyelids, replaced by a web of silver light. I could feel the life force of everything around me. The dying trees, the terrified heart of Liam, the cold rage of Kyle, the corrupted hunger of the ferals. I opened my eyes, and the world looked different. The darkness was shot through with threads of energy. I lifted my hands, and a soft silver light pooled in my palms. The scarred feral leader, having noticed the new source of light, broke off his attack on Kyle and turned toward me, a low growl rumbling in his chest. What is this? The king brought a sorceress with him? He lunged, a blur of black fur and yellow teeth. Time seemed to slow. I didn't think. I reacted. I thrust my hands forward, and a wave of pure silver energy erupted from me. It wasn't a violent force. It was a cleansing one. It struck the feral wolf mid-air, and he screamed, a sound of agony and shock. The sickly yellow light in his eyes flickered and died, and the corrupted energy around him dissolved. He hit the ground, not dead, but dazed, whimpering, his form seeming to shrink back to that of a normal, if oversized, wolf. The other ferals froze, their bloodlust turning to fear. They looked from their fallen leader to me, this strange she-wolf who wielded moonlight as a weapon. This was my chance. I focused all my energy, all the power that was surging through me, and I screamed. Not a human scream, but a psychic one. A wave of pure command that struck the minds of every feral in the clearing. Leave! They scrambled over each other in their haste to obey, melting back into the shadows of the forest, their corrupted energy vanishing with them. Silence fell, broken only by the crackle of the torch and the pained gasps of the wounded. Kale shifted back, his human form naked and covered in blood, both his and the enemy's. He rushed to his brother's side, cutting him free from the stake. Liam collapsed into his arms, barely conscious. "Kale," Liam whispered, his voice choked with pain. "I'm sorry." "Hush, brother," Kale said, his voice thick with an emotion I had never heard from him before. He cradled Liam's head, his expression one of profound relief and regret. "Just be still. I have you." He looked up at me over Liam's prone form. The guards were tending to their wounded, staring at me with awe and terror. But Kale's gaze was different. The king was gone. The strategist was gone. All that was left was the man, stripped bare, his heart in his eyes. He looked at me, the woman who had just saved his brother, the woman who had wielded a power he had only read about in prophecies, the woman he had wronged. And in his silver eyes, I saw it. It wasn't gratitude for saving his kingdom. It wasn't awe at my power. It was something far more personal, far more devastating. It was love. A desperate, hopeless, all-consuming love that he had clearly been fighting since the moment he first laid eyes on me. He hadn't just claimed me for his kingdom. He had claimed me for himself, using duty as a shield to hide the truth of his own heart. It was the most profound confession, made without a single word. And in that moment, seeing the raw vulnerability on his face, feeling the truth of his emotions through our bond, the last of my hatred turned to dust, blown away by the force of a love I never expected and a destiny I could no longer deny. The redemption was not his to earn, it was mine to give, and the choice was no longer a choice at all. We returned to the castle under the light of a new dawn, a small, battered procession carrying our wounded. Liam was alive, his injuries severe but not life-threatening, thanks to the swift work of the royal healers who met us at the gates. The court was a hive of frantic whispers. The story of our battle in the woods, of the prince's rescue and the king's fury spread like wildfire. But the whispers about me had changed. The disdain was gone, replaced by a fearful reverence. I was no longer the king's strange obsession. I was the moon witch of the north, the woman who had turned back a feral pack with a scream. Kale took me directly to his private chambers, a Spartan, masculine space that was the heart of his power. It was dominated by a huge oak desk covered in maps and reports, a weapons rack against one wall, and a bed that looked like it was rarely used. He gently pushed me to sit on a leather armchair by the fire, his hands surprisingly tender as he checked me for injuries. Finding none, he knelt before me, taking my hands in his. The king was gone, leaving only Kale, his silver eyes dark with the weight of his unsaid words. "Ilara," he began, his voice rough. "What you did back there, I never." He struggled, a man unaccustomed to vulnerability. "I know," I said softly, saving him from the words he couldn't find. I squeezed his hands. I felt it, through the bond. His shoulders sagged with relief and a fresh wave of guilt. "I wanted to tell you," he confessed, his gaze dropping to our joined hands. "From the moment I saw you, standing beside him at that farce of a ceremony, the bond, it was like being struck by lightning. I knew you were my mate, but the prophecy, I thought if I kept my distance, if I made it about duty, I could protect you, protect myself." "From what?" I asked. "From this," he said, finally meeting my eyes, his own shining with a fierce, painful intensity. "From the weakness of needing someone so much that the thought of losing them would shatter your world. A king cannot afford such a weakness." "Is that what you think love is?" I murmured, my thumb stroking his scarred knuckles. "A weakness? It is for a man like me. he said, his voice raw. A man who has only ever known how to rule through fear and strength. I didn't know how to be the man you deserved, the man Liam could have been for you. So I took you, like a thief, and told myself it was for the good of the realm. It was all there, the whole painful truth. His fear, his loneliness, his sacrifice. He had been willing to be the monster in my story if it meant keeping his kingdom and me safe. He had chosen to be hated rather than risk being loved. You let me believe I was nothing more than a tool, I said, not as an accusation, but as a statement of fact. I had to, he whispered. If I had let you see the truth, if I had let myself feel the bond completely, I would have been compromised. My enemies would have seen it. They would have used you against me. It was the only way. The blight was still spreading. The kingdom was still in danger. But the immediate threat, the one that had festered between us, was finally being addressed. This was our final battle, not against Pharaohs, but against the pride and fear that had kept us apart. I stood, pulling him up with me. We were the same height now, equals. I raised a hand to his face, my fingers tracing the faint scar on his eyebrow. You are the Alpha King, Kale. You carry the weight of this entire kingdom on your shoulders. You have never been allowed a moment of weakness. But you are also my mate. And with me, you don't have to be strong. With me, you can lay your burdens down. A single tear traced a path through the grime on his cheek. He leaned into my touch, a shuddering breath escaping him, as if a great weight had finally been lifted. Elara, he breathed my name like a prayer. He lowered his head, his lips meeting mine in a kiss that was not about passion or claiming, but about surrender. It was a kiss of profound gratitude, of desperate relief, of two broken souls finally finding their whole. The bond between us flared, not with pain or confusion, but with a brilliant, blinding light of acceptance. In that moment, we were not a king and his unwilling prize. We were just Kyle and Elara, mates, partners, two halves of a prophecy finally ready to face the coming darkness. He was my king, and I was his salvation. And for the first time, I felt not like a prisoner, but like a queen. The world outside our newfound peace did not wait. The wasting sickness in the east spread, and reports from the northern border grew more dire. The feral packs, though momentarily repelled, were gathering again, their numbers swelling. The shadow of the prophecy was lengthening, and it was time to face it. Kyle and I stood before the Council of Elders, a grim assembly of the oldest and wisest wolves in the kingdom. Liam was there, his arm in a sling, but his eyes clear and steady. He had learned the full truth upon his recovery, and the resentment he held for his brother had been replaced by a quiet, somber understanding. He looked at me and nodded, a gesture of support that mended the last of the fractures between the three of us. The prophecy must be fulfilled, Kyle announced, his voice ringing with authority, but his hand found mine, his grip a silent source of strength. The blight is not a natural phenomenon. It is a curse, laid upon our lands centuries ago by the Shadow Weavers, a coven of dark witches our ancestors banished. The Annal of Kings speaks of a ritual, a joining of the king's strength and the Mooncaller's power that can break it. The High Elder, the same man who had almost bound me to Liam, stepped forward. The ritual is dangerous, Your Majesty. It requires a great sacrifice. To cleanse the land, the Mooncaller must draw the poison of the curse into herself. She becomes a vessel for its darkness, and the king must use the strength of his alpha blood, tied to the very heart of the kingdom, to purge it from her. If his will is not strong enough, they will both be consumed. A cold dread filled the room. Kael's grip on my hand tightened. He had known this. He had known the risk to me, to us, from the very beginning. This was why he had been so tormented. He was asking me not just to save his kingdom, but to risk my own soul in the process. I looked at him, at the agony in his eyes, and I felt a fierce, protective love rise in me. He had been willing to bear my hatred to protect me. Now I would risk everything to save him and his people. "I will do it," I said, my voice clear and unwavering. I looked at the council, at the king, at the prince. This power was given to me for a reason. I will not let our people perish. I will not let this kingdom fall. That night we prepared. The ritual was to be held in the heart of the ancient Weirwood Grove, a place of immense natural power. As the twin moons rose in the sky, casting a silver glow over the castle, Kael came to me in my chambers. He held a small wooden box in his hands. He opened it, revealing a single, perfect winter lily, preserved by some magic to be in eternal bloom. "This was my mother's," he said, his voice soft. "She was a gentle soul, like you. She believed that true strength was not in the power to command, but in the courage to feel. She would have loved you." He carefully tucked the lily into my braided hair. "I will not lose you, Elara," he vowed, his hands cupping my face. "I swear it on my crown, my life, my soul. I will bring you back." "I know," I whispered, my heart full. "But if the worst should happen, you must promise me something. Promise me you will not let your heart turn to winter again. Promise me you will rule with the justice I have seen, but also with the kindness your mother taught you." "I promise," he said, his voice thick with emotion. He sealed the promise with a deep, lingering kiss, a testament to everything we had found and everything we were about to risk. We walked to the grove hand in hand, the entire court following in a silent procession. We were no longer a conquering king and his captive. We were a united front, a symbol of hope against the encroaching darkness. In the center of the grove, where the moonlight pooled like liquid silver, I took my place. Kael stood before me, his love a tangible shield around my heart. I closed my eyes and reached out with my power, not to the moonlight this time, but to the land itself. I felt the sickness, the dark, cloying poison that choked the life from the soil and the souls of the wolves. It was a living entity, ancient and full of hate. I opened myself to it, ignoring Kael's sharp intake of breath as he felt my intent through the bond. "Come to me," I commanded. The darkness answered. It surged up from the ground, a torrent of black, viscous energy, and slammed into me. The pain was unimaginable, 1,000 times worse than the dream. It was the agony of every dying plant, every sick wolf, every inch of poisoned land, concentrated into my own body. I screamed, collapsing to my knees, black veins spreading across my skin. I could feel it trying to consume me, to snuff out my light and make me its own. "Elara!" Kael's roar of anguish echoed through the grove. He rushed to my side, dropping to his knees and pulling me into his arms. He held my face, forcing me to look at him, to see past the pain. "Stay with me. Do not let it take you." I was fading, the light within me flickering. But then I saw his eyes, my silver-eyed king, and I held on to that. I held on to him. He pressed his forehead against mine, and I felt his power, raw and wild, surge into me. It was the strength of the mountains, the purity of the snow, the unyielding heart of the Alpha King. It battled the darkness within me, a storm of silver and black. It was a war for my soul, fought in the landscape of my own body, and all I could do was hold on to him, my anchor in the tempest. His strength poured into me, and my light, nurtured by his, began to fight back. We pushed together, a united force of love and sacrifice against an ancient hate. And with a final, explosive burst of silver light that erupted from us and washed over the entire grove, the darkness shattered. I collapsed, boneless and utterly spent, into his arms. The black veins on my skin receded, the agonizing pain fading to a dull ache. I was weak, exhausted, but I was alive. I was me. Cale held me, his body trembling with the aftershocks of the battle, burying his face in my hair. "It's gone," he whispered, his voice choked with relief. "Elara, you did it. It's gone." The land itself seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the weirwood trees, and the moonlight seemed brighter, pure. We had won. In the weeks that followed, the kingdom began to heal. Word came from the east that the wasting sickness had vanished, the crops were recovering, and the newborn pups were strong and healthy. The land, cleansed of its ancient curse, was coming back to life. My own strength returned slowly, nurtured by Cale's constant, devoted care. He rarely left my side, abdicating his daily duties to a council led by a capable and humbled Liam. The bond between the brothers, once fraught with tension, was now one of mutual respect and love. The court, having witnessed the ritual and its aftermath, treated me with a reverence that bordered on worship. I was their savior, their moon queen. But in the quiet moments with Cale, I was simply Elara. Our love, forged in conflict and sealed in sacrifice, was the foundation of our new world. The power in my blood was now a part of me, a gentle hum beneath my skin, no longer a terrifying, unknown force. I had accepted it, mastered it, and made it my own. Kyle, in turn, had learned to rule not just with strength, but with the vulnerability and compassion he had once feared. He was a better king, a better man. He had let go of his winter. One evening, as the sun set, Kyle led me to the high balcony of our chambers. We stood together, looking out over the sprawling city and the green lands beyond. The kingdom was at peace, bathed in the golden light of dusk. "I never thought this was possible," he said quietly, his arm wrapped securely around my waist. "To feel content, to not be alone." "You were never truly alone, Kyle," I said, leaning my head against his shoulder. "You just needed to let someone in." He turned me to face him, his silver eyes soft with a love that still took my breath away. He gently touched the white winter lily in my hair, which I now wore every day. "You are more than my mate, more than my queen," he said, his voice filled with a quiet reverence. "You are the heart of this kingdom. You are the heart of me." He kissed me then, a slow, gentle kiss filled with the promise of 1,000 peaceful sunsets to come. The Winter King had found his spring, and the girl from Stone Creek had found her home. We were not a prophecy fulfilled or a treaty honored. We were a new beginning, a love story born from the ashes of duty. And our new normal was a peace more profound than either of us had ever dared to dream.